Imagine this scenario. You spend $2 million on medical treatments. You fly in the top specialists from Switzerland and Germany. You turn your mansion into a sterile private hospital. You buy equipment that not even the best public clinics can afford. All of this just to hear one devastating sentence. Your son will never walk again. His spinal cord is dead. You believe it because the man telling you this wears a $5,000 suit and has diplomas covering every inch of his wall. You pay him, you thank him, you treat him like a god. But now, imagine that the cure, the real cure, was right under your nose the whole time. Literally 10 feet away. In the hands of a woman you pay minimum wage to scrub your toilets. In the hands of a cleaning lady you don't even look at when you pass her in the hallway. This is the story of Richard Sterling, a man who had power and money but was completely blind. And it's the story of Sarah, a woman who lost everything but was the only one who kept her eyes open. Get ready, because what she found in a trash can in the Millionaire's bathroom shocked the entire country. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button. Here, we uncover the truth that hurts but heals. Richard Sterling was a titan of industry. If you live in New York, you've seen his name on the construction cranes. Sterling Development. He built glass towers for people who don't have time to look at the sky. Richard didn't have time either. His life was divided into 15-minute slots on a Google Calendar. But after 8 p.m., when he returned to his penthouse overlooking Central Park, success meant nothing. The house was silent. Not a peaceful silence, like a library. It was a screaming silence, a silence that smelled of expensive disinfectant and loneliness. In the center of this apartment, which looked more like a modern art museum than a home, was Lucas's room. Lucas was 7 years old. He had big brown eyes and a wheelchair that cost as much as a brand new car. It was voice activated, had massage functions, and heated seats. But for Lucas, it was a prison. 2 years ago, on a rainy night on the interstate, Richard's life shattered. A skid, a crash into the guardrail. His wife died on impact. Lucas, strapped in the back seat, survived. But according to the doctors, the force of the crash crushed his spine. From that day on, the house was ruled by Dr. Cromwell. Cromwell was the owner of the exclusive Neurogen clinic. He was the kind of man who always smelled of expensive cologne and spoke in a voice so calm it was hypnotic. Scene, Richard's home office. Dr. Cromwell sits in a leather chair. Richard stands by the window, looking out at the city lights. "Richard, we need to increase the stimulation dosage," Cromwell said, scrolling through charts on a tablet. "Lucas's muscles are weakening. It's a natural process with such a severe spinal injury, but he's so drowsy. Doctor... Richard turned around, fear in his eyes. "He sleeps all day?" "He barely speaks. That is the price of fighting neuropathic pain," the doctor replied smoothly. "These injections, the Swiss formula I import, they regenerate tissue, but they tax the nervous system. It's a trade-off. Do you want him to suffer in agony, or do you want him to rest peacefully?" Richard rubbed his face with his hands. He was exhausted. "I don't want him to suffer." "Do whatever it takes. I'll need a wire transfer for the new batch. $60,000. Import taxes went up." Richard didn't even blink. He pulled out his phone and authorized the transfer. To him, money was just numbers. He didn't know he had just paid for his own son's poison. At the same time, in the service elevator of the building, Sarah was arriving. She wore a shapeless gray uniform with the logo Spotless Cleaning. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun. No makeup, hands rough from work. No one looking at Sarah scrubbing the grout in the bathroom would ever guess who she was 3 years ago. Sarah Daniels, head physiotherapist for a major NFL team, an expert in motor recovery, the woman who could get a quarterback back on the field in 2 weeks when others said 2 months. But her career ended in one day. She remembered it like a nightmare. Flashback. The locker room. A young star player, Christian, screaming at her in front of the cameras. "It's her fault. She ruined my knee. She gave me the wrong exercises." It was a lie. Christian had been taking steroids and playing with a torn ligament against Sarah's advice. When his knee finally snapped during the Super Bowl, he needed a scapegoat. Sarah was an easy target. The team destroyed her. Lawyers destroyed her reputation. She lost her license. She lost her savings. Her husband left her, unable to handle the shame and the bankruptcy. Now, Sarah entered Richard's penthouse through the back door. Remember Sarah, history supervisor, a woman with a cigarette voice? Mr. Sterling doesn't like us getting underfoot. And don't stare at the kid. It upsets him. Be invisible, like a ghost. Sarah nodded. She grabbed a bucket and a mop and went to Lucas's room. The boy sat in his wheelchair, his head lolling to the side. Drool trickled from the corner of his mouth. He looked like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Sarah felt a pang in her heart. A neglected child in a palace, she thought. She started mopping the floor around the wheelchair. The water in the bucket was ice cold. By accident, while wringing out the cloth, she splashed a few drops onto Lucas's bare foot. What happened a split second later changed everything. Lucas's pinky toe twitched. It fanned out and curled back. Sarah froze. She stood up slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. That wasn't a nervous tick. Ticks are rhythmic. That was a reaction to thermal shock. She looked around. There were cameras in the corners, but she knew no one watched them live. She stepped between the camera and the boy, blocking the view with her body. "Hey, buddy," she whispered. Lucas slowly lifted his eyelids. They were foggy. "Let's try a test," she said softly. She pulled a pen from her pocket. With the blunt end, she firmly scraped the outer edge of the boy's foot. The Babinski reflex test. With a severed spine, the foot should be dead. Zero reaction or a pathological extension. Lucas jerked his leg back. He grimaced. "Ouch! ... double quotes," he moaned quietly. Sarah leaned against the wall to steady herself. Her heart was pounding like a hammer. He felt pain. He had a withdrawal reflex. His spine wasn't severed. It was intact, so why wasn't he walking? Why were his muscles like jelly? She looked at the nightstand full of medicine vials. Suisse, Formula, boxers with no English labels. Her physio instincts kicked into high gear. Something smelled fishy here, and it wasn't the floor cleaner. For the next 3 weeks, Sarah led a double life. Officially, she cleaned. Unofficially, she healed. She waited for the moments when Richard was at the office and the lazy nurse went out to the terrace to smoke, which happened every hour. That's when Sarah would drop the mop and rush to Lucas. "Lucas, listen to me. I know you're tired. I know the room is spinning, but you have to help me." She started with deep tissue massage to wake up the receptors. Her hands, rough from detergents, but incredibly skilled, worked magic. She released the tightness. She stimulated the nerve points. She sang to him while she worked. "Twinkle, twinkle. Little star, a simple song, but sung with soul." Lucas started to come back. It was like watching a flower rise after a storm. First, he started holding his head up. Then, he started squeezing her hand. Until one day, in the 3rd week, it happened. "I have to pee," he said clearly. No slurring. Sarah smiled through tears. "Then let's go to the bathroom." "I can't," the boy said sadly. "You can. I'll be your legs. You be my strength." She helped him up. She didn't lift him like dead weight. She supported his hips. She forced him to engage his core. Lucas stood. His knees shook like jello, but they locked. He stood on his own for 3 seconds. He collapsed back into the wheelchair, breathing hard, but his eyes were shining. For the first time in 2 years, the fog was gone. Pride was there. "Did I do it?" he asked. "You did it, champ? You are healthy. Someone is lying to you, but we're going to show them." Sarah didn't know the clock was ticking. Richard was getting suspicious. He noticed his son was different, sleeping less, trying to movie. Instead of being happy, Richard called Dr. Cromwell. "He's agitated. Dr. May, maybe the meds aren't working?" "I'll increase the dose tomorrow," Cromwell promised over the phone. "And I'll check the staff. Someone must be overstimulating him. It's dangerous." That day was supposed to be a triumph, but it turned into a tragedy. Thursday, 2 p.m. Richard was supposed to be at a board meeting. Sarah knew she had 2 hours. She decided to take a big step. She wanted Lucas to walk from the wheelchair to the window. 3 steps. "Come on, Lucas, look at me." "Don't look down." The boy, holding onto a walker that Sarah had smuggled up from the basement, took a step, dragging his feet, but he took it. One more. He took a second one. Achi, that moment the front door slammed open. Richard had come back for forgotten documents. He walked into the living room and stopped dead in his tracks. He saw his son, sweating, face purple with effort, struggling for every inch. To Richard, manipulated by the doctor for years, this looked like torture. Get away from him. He roared. He ran over, knocking the walker away. Lucas fell onto the carpet, crying. "Dad, I'm walking," the boy shouted. But Richard wasn't listening. He only saw a crazy cleaning lady risking his disabled son's life. "What are you doing? Do you want to break his spine completely?" "Mr. Sterling, opened your eyes," Sarah screamed back, adrenaline taking over. "He isn't disabled. He is healthy. It's the drugs that are killing him." "Get out." Richard was shaken with rage. "You have 1 minute or I'm calling the police." He threw her out. Literally pushed her out the front door of the apartment. Lucas was crying inside. "Dad, no." "She's helping me." But Richard slammed the door. He gave his son a glass of water and the pill Cromwell had left in case of a panic attack. Within 10 minutes, Lucas was asleep again, a vegetable again. Richard sat in his armchair and buried his face in his hands. He thought he had saved his son from a lunatic. Sarah sat on the curb outside the luxury building. It was raining. She had no job, no money, and now Richard would probably press charges for assault. She could just walk away, go back to a miserable life, and forget it. But she heard Lucas's voice in her head. Did I do it? She reached into her apron pocket. When Richard was pushing her out, she had instinctively grabbed one thing from the side table, a small, empty vial that Cromwell had left that morning. She pulled it out. The label was in German. Muskelrelaxas, tie, Histischverwendung, New basic medical terms. She typed it into the translator on her cracked phone screen. The result, muscle relaxant veterinary use only. Second line, used for immobilizing large animals, horses, cattle before surgery. She felt bile rise in her throat. This wasn't medicine for regeneration. Cromwell was giving a 7-year-old child a horse tranquilizer. That's why Lucas was so limp. That's why he slept. That's why he couldn't walk. It was a chemical straitjacket. Cromwell had created the perfect patient, one who would never recover and would need treatment costing millions forever. Sarah knew the vial alone wasn't enough. Richard wouldn't believe her. He'd think she planted it. She needed proof from the day of the accident. She ran to the subway. She went to City Hospital. Her old college friend, Betty, worked in the records department. She burst in, wet, out of breath. "Betty, you have to help me. I need a favor. A big one. Sarah, are you crazy? I could lose my job. If you don't do this, a kid dies. Remember when I saved you during finals? You owe me." Betty sighed, but she logged into the archives. They searched by date and name. Sterling, Lucas, found it. The original CT scan from 2 years ago. The radiologists report not Cromwell, severe lumbar contusion, soft tissue swelling, spinal cord intact, recommendation, physical therapy, prognosis, full recovery expected. Sarah took a picture of the screen. She had everything. Now for the hardest part, convincing a father who hated her. She went back to the apartment building. The doorman wouldn't let her in. "Mr. Sterling banned you. Please leave." Sarah didn't leave. She waited by the garage exit. She knew Richard went to a business dinner every night at 7 p.m. She waited 4 hours, freezing, hungry. At 7:15 p.m., a black limousine pulled out. Sarah ran into the middle of the street. She threw her arms out. The car screeched to a halt, inches from her legs. Richard jumped out, furious. "Are you insane? You want to get killed? Read this," she screamed, shoving her phone in his face. "Get out of my way. Your son's spine isn't broken." Cromwell is drugging him with That sentence made Richard freeze. Horse tranquilizers. It sounded so absurd that it had to be real. He looked at Sarah's phone screen. The photo of the CT scan. The date matched. The name matched. Spinal cord intact. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. "From the hospital archives. The original Cromwell showed you a fake Mr. Sterling, look at the vial. The German one. Google the name. I beg you. If I'm lying, run me over with this car. But if I'm right, then you are killing your own child. Richard stood in the rain. He looked into the eyes of this simple woman. He saw a determination he never saw in his wealthy friends. He pulled out his phone. He called his house. Nurse, read me the name on Lucas's medicine vial. Spell it out. The nurse read it. It was the same name Sarah had said. Richard typed it into Google. He saw a picture of a horse and a warning. Highly toxic to humans. His phone slipped from his hand and hit the asphalt. The screen shattered. Just like his trust in the world had shattered. Get in, he said to Sarah. His voice cracked. We're going to get him. The rest played out like an action movie. They took Lucas from the house. They went to a private toxicology lab Richard owned. The results confirmed everything. Lucas was saturated with chemicals. The next morning, Richard called Dr. Cromwell. Doctor, I want to make a donation to your clinic. $1 million. Come pick up the check. Cromwell arrived in his best suit, smiling from ear to ear. Richard was waiting in the living room, but he didn't have a check. He had handcuffed symbolically. The police were in the kitchen. When Cromwell entered, Richard turned on the giant TV. It showed the security footage of Lucas standing up with Sarah. Do you see that, Doctor? Richard asked. That's impossible. That's a trick, Cromwell stammered. Then Sarah walked out of the kitchen holding Lucas's hand. The boy, still weak but de-tots, stood on his own 2 feet. Game over, Dr. Sarah said. Police swarmed the room. Cromwell tried to run but tripped over his own lies in a rug. He was dragged out in cuffs, screaming it was a mistake. 1 year later, the garden of Richard's mansion is full of life. No more sterile silence. There is a dog barking. A barbecue grill sizzling, guests laughing. In the middle of the lawn, we see Lucas. He is kicking a soccer ball. He walks with a slight limp, but he is running. He scores a goal. Goal. He shouts. He runs to the sideline. Richard is standing there. He's not wearing a suit. He's wearing a tracksuit. And standing next to him is Sarah. She's not a cleaning lady anymore. She's the director of the Second Step Foundation, which Richard funded to help misdiagnosed children. Richard puts his arm around Sarah. They watch the boy. You saved us both, Richard says softly. No. Sarah smiles. I just cleaned the window so you could finally see the sun. That is the story of how the greatest evil can hide behind a smile, and the greatest hero can have dirty hands. If this story touched you, type truth in the comments and share this video. Let's make sure no one gets fooled again. See you in the next one.